Okay, here we go again. So I biased this excellent 1983 Marshall JCM 800 4010 combo to 40 milliamps on the hot tube. I think it was 39.4 on the cooler tube. And that was wall voltage, but going into the ohmite variable transformer, that's probably around 38 milliamps. And it was nice. It's biased a little bit too hot for my taste. How would I describe it? Definitely compressed. Easy distortion. Great for playing lead. Kind of lost some of the treble high-end definition. I actually like that in between dirty clean sound, and I'll use a old BK Butler real tube overdrive pedal for gain. That's kind of my channel switch for this. So I'm going to put it back up on the amp cradle, and we're going to cut the bias. I'm going to try, I think I'm going to go for 37 milliamp on the hot tube and play it for a couple of days and see. The beauty of doing this is you can really dial in the sound you want. And, there's so many styles of playing out there, and it depends on your style, your touch, your speakers, your pickups. I mean, so many variables. But once you learn how to do this, it's easy to chase that tone you want. And so yeah, let's get this thing up on the amp cradle. I'm not going to show you how to take the chassis out of the cabinet. I think we covered that in another video. But yeah, so give me a second, we'll get it going. Okay, we're powered up. I just hit the power, and hopefully you can tell there, it's on standby. We're gonna let this go for about 10 minutes or so. Get the tubes somewhat hot, and then when you hit the full power, you're gonna figure another 10 minutes for the current to stop bouncing around. So let's just take a quick look. I've got the SRS dual bias tool, and what I did is I just put a little Velcro on the bottom and a little Velcro strip just to make it easy. That goes to this multimeter. Let's take a nice look here. Volts DC, set to 200 millivolts. The connections right there to the dual bias tool. Here's my little ceramic tipped plastic screwdriver. It's calling it a ceramic aligner tool. You can see the brand name. To be honest, they're kind of cheap. You can tell. Some of the tips, the ceramic tips, are actually not exactly straight, but it doesn't matter. The bottom line is you need something non-conductive. And it's just, like I've said before, I'm not an electrician. I just basically needed to get my amp bias, but then when you start doing this, you realize, say you bring it to an amp tech and he plays super, super clean country western lead guitar, and that's how he likes his amps. Not to make a pun here, but whoever is biasing your amp might have a bias on the tone of it. And everyone's different. So learn how to do this and get what you want out of your tube amp. That's the beauty of a tube amplifier. You can bias it within a certain range. The tubes you pick have an effect. So we haven't hit standby, but you set all the controls to 0. I got nothing plugged in. What's that? Oh, wow. Little spider web or something. So we're connected to the speaker load. I've got it set at 8 ohms because that Marshall has two G1280 Rolla Celestians, and you wire up two 16, or actually they're 15 ohm speakers, it says, and you're going to get 8 ohms that way. So let's just take a look here. I don't know if you can see, I marked the tubes 1 and 2, and I mark 1 to be next to the cap, because as I mentioned before, say you've got a couple of tubes and they're, I don't know, like 4 or 5 milliamps apart, you could actually switch the tubes in the sockets and you might get 2 or 3 milliamps apart, or they might even go further apart, but you've got to experiment. I was told that one tube socket, so meaning a 50 watt amp, you've got 2 power tube sockets, one typically reads hotter. And that is the case with every amp I've done so far. So I've done, this is my 4010 combo. This is a 4104, also a 1983. Both of them have black caps. I don't know if there's some magic to the black cap Marshalls, but every single one I've ever played just seems to sound better. I don't know. And then I've got a Germino JTM 45 Marshall clone, 1965, 1966. They all seem to, one socket seems to be hotter. So let's cut the camera and power this thing up and see what we get. Okay, we are powered up, full power. Everything's on 0, it's idling. But it's, maybe you remember the first time I biased this. Let's see which one's the hot tube. Oh, that was the hot tube. So the hot tube right now is reading 36, 7, 8, 9. It's going to bounce around. It's going to climb up to 40. And I had the power on and the standby off for maybe 10 minutes, and I just hit the power switch a second ago. So this takes time. And like I was saying before, you got to give yourself probably an hour, unless you want to rush it. And if you end up rushing the job, you might be back in here. I'm back in here because, honestly, I'm new to doing this. And some research I did showed 40 milliamps on the hot tube. Well, I should say 38, because if I read 40 at the wall, and my wall voltage varies from 123 to 125 volts, then when I go into a ohmite variable transformer right there, I got 2 of them, they're basically identical. One has meters, and I set that to 115 volts, then I'm going to get my 38. To me, and again, it's about style and what you like to do, it's not exactly what I'm looking for. It's better than the way it was. Oh, and just so you know, that black circular thing with the white middle part is the bias trim pot. We are going to be hitting that. But so I'm going to let this warm up a bit more till it gets to about 40, and then we'll come back. But what I was saying is the tone, the way I've got it set right now, and I've played this for a couple of days now, maybe a couple hours at a time. It's smooth, it's compressed, it's really harmonically rich. It's definitely in the upper range of that bloom zone, that blooming tube tone that you get. What kind of tipped me off that this really wasn't what I was looking for is I noticed my treble response was darker than normal, and the tubes are the same, even though I've got new Tungsol 6550 tubes in here. They're both, I I think one is date coded 1968 and 69. The Telefunkens have been in there for years. Those things just never die. Take note, invest in some old school Telefunken preamp tubes. Look for diamond, like a diamond etching on the bottom in the middle of the base of the pins. Hard to beat. And realize there's a ribbed version and a smooth plate, and they're different. I wouldn't say one is better than the other. I actually have, well, here, let's walk around here. So, you got, so under these tube shields, okay, so that one closest to the power tube, for some reason, when I put a ribbed plate there, I really like the way this amp sounds. The middle preamp tube, and it's under that metal tube shield, that's kind of the main driver of your tone. Or not the main one, but it's a big player. And then the third one, right there on the end, is called the phase inverter. And I do know if you wanted to get like a tighter bass sound, bass response, putting a 12 AT7 there is an interesting swap. I did that for a little bit, but I'm back to all Telefunken 12AX7s, ECC 83, same thing. But I like in that first one right next to the power tube, I really like the rib plate. It's a little grainier, grittier kind of distortion. So yeah, let's come back when this thing gets hot. Okay, we are back. I've actually been letting the amp run at idle for quite a while here. I had an old friend stop by in the studio. This is actually my music teaching studio. I teach guitar, bass, vocal lessons here. And but let's so I've got a reading. Let's do a little check here. Here we go. The hot tube is at 37. Oh wait, I take it back. The hot tube is 38. And the cooler tube is 37. I'm actually looking for 37. So I'm going to bust this down. And like I said, the reason is it's kind of hard to explain. I mean, you gotta play it, and I'm going to use descriptive words here, but when I had this at 40 milliamps for the hot tube, which would equate to 38 milliamps going through my ohmite variable transformer set to 115 volts, it was smooth, it was super easy to solo on, definitely more compressed, definitely into the upper bloom zone, sustaining. But what really tipped me off was it seemed like the highs, the treble, wasn't there. The treble was definitely darker. The bass was softer, and these are 6550s, and these are, late 60s USA Tungsol 6550s. Hallmark is a really amazing bass sound. So what I'm going to try to do is set it up so the hot tube is at 37, and the cool tube, I'm going to guess, is going to be around 36, and then play that for a few days. So let me see if I can get this in a view where we can see pretty cleanly. So I'm going to break this down a little bit here. Give it a turn. Okay, that's 37.3. So, like I said, you're just barely going to touch the thing. And what's the other one at? 36.2, 37.2. So, yeah, this takes time. I mean, but look at it this way. If you get some nice tubes in there, they're fairly closely matched, and you spend some time and you do this, unless you leave your amp on or do something stupid, you're not going to need to do this for a couple of years. I mean, what I would say though is when you're going to bias your amp, expect. So I did this. This is the 4010 combo. I did this a couple of days ago. It came out nice, but not exactly the tone I was looking for. So I talk about this bloom zone, and it's where you just get this really touch sensitive response to guitar playing. And if you set here's another angle, you set the bias too high, it's going to be quicker to distort, more compressed. Think about compressed. It's less touch sensitive, really. And so I'm looking for a little bit more touch sensitivity. So we got 37.2 and 36.2. I'm going to leave this on for a few more minutes and we'll come back and see what we got. Okay, we are back. I've got 36.8 on the hot tube, 35.6 on the cool tube. Man, it's like chasing this bias thing. I'm kind of tempted because I'm getting 36.7, 36.8, 36.9, 37. It's normal for the current to jump. Think about like you throw a rock into a lake and the ripples will, continue on, and it takes a while for it to settle out. That's kind of how I feel about this bias current thing. Like it just, once you move that trim pot, it's going to take, I don't know, whatever it takes. It's been seeming like it can take, 5-10 minutes at least. And I'm assuming the hotter the tubes are, the longer you let this idle at full power, not just on standby, the more likely. So, okay, 36, man, it's tricky. I mean, you get to this point where if you try and bust it up just a little bit more, is it really going to make that minuscule difference, or are you going to go beyond what you were trying to do and then it's too hot? So I'm kind of wondering if 37.5 might even be better anyways. But so I've got 36.9, 37. While we're waiting, let me just show you so I was mentioning these tools here. Let me see if I can grab the package, what these things are. So, whoops. Let's see if I can get this to focus. Maybe not. Maybe not. Okay. I'll see if I can take the camera off the tripod to check it out. Notice this tip end. It's not exactly straight. And that's what I was saying. These things come in a set of like 10. And some are Phillips head. Most of them are straight. But obviously that's not straight. So I'm going to use this other one. Let's see if we can bust this up just a touch more. Not give myself a new hairdo. Okay. I didn't. Okay. Let's see if we can get this thing to move. My hand is behind my back. Okay, I felt that move that time. 37.3, which I'd be happy with if it actually stabilizes there, and 36.1, 36.2. So even if it goes 37.5, I'll be okay with that. Okay, let's see here. So yeah, it takes time to get this thing straight. Okay, 37.1, 2, 3. I'm going to take the camera off the tripod. Hopefully I don't make too much of a disturbance here. Okay, let's take a look. 37.4, 3, 2. That's good. If I hit the... Okay. So I'm going to leave that there for a second. Let's look at this thing. I think what it says is ceramic Allgner tool, Allgner. Doesn't make sense in English to me, but maybe the Chinese writing makes more sense there. But the bottom line is, whoa, you get a set of these things, and like I showed you the other one, it was bent. Some of these are going to be good. I'm no expert with this stuff, but I think the majority of trim pots are going to take a flathead. Here, let's see if we can get this back on the tripod. Not create too much. Okay, that's not bad. But yeah, you don't need much for tools. The SRS dual bias tool. I got mine on eBay, but they have a website too. Some of these ceramic tipped screwdrivers, these are the most common. What was the brand here on this thing? Yeuran. However you pronounce that, whatever they say a ceramic Allgner tool is, it's one of these things. And you could see these on eBay for like $8 a piece, or you could buy the entire set for $10. So look around. So the SRS dual bias tool, some of these ceramic tipped screwdrivers, and a digital multimeter, which are typically around $20. It's $100 worth of tools, and you're set to go. If you've got a bunch of tube amps, I don't have a bunch. I have 3 that can be adjusted. Actually, that's another thing to consider. I have a Bell PA BE20 tube amp. It takes, let's see, 2 6V6. It takes a 6 AX5 rectifier. It takes a 12 AX7, and it takes a 6 AU6. It is a fixed bias. Not all tube amps you can bias. So if you don't see something like that, and this is, I think, kind of specific to the Marshall amps. I think Fender has potentiometers, pots that look like that, with the center having this white piece, and you can see a spot that's adjustable. So, okay, looking at the meter, I got 37.12, 35.678. I'm going to call this good. Well, I'm going to call this good to test out for a couple of days and see where it goes. So I guess this is a follow-up video for the 1983 Marshall JCM 800 4010 combo. And what I would normally suggest, and again, I'm new to this, and so if there's some experts out there, please chime in. But what I would suggest is whatever you do for your bias, if you like it, leave it for a week or so and then check. And to check, and now I didn't like the bias setting on this, so I knew I was going back in here. But let's just say I liked it, and I wanted to check to see if the bias drifted at all. I would not pull this out of the cabinet, and I would pull the power tubes. I would install the SRS bias tool sockets in the amp, plug the tubes in, and see. And if your readings haven't drifted, there's no need to break the thing down. One thing I forgot to mention, because there was a big pause between the amp warming up current-wise to when I came back on, the bias did not drift. It was a pretty solid 39.9. Like I said, I had a friend come in here and got a little distracted, but so that's what you want to check for. And my understanding is if bias is going to drift, it typically drifts to the lower side. So anyways, that's my follow-up video for this amp. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.